hear me speak. So we'll start can I start with roll call, please? Thank you.
Chair Kimbrough.
Here.
Vice Chair Studfield.
Here.
Member Bagwell. Here. Member Bonkowski. Member Erb. Member Hastings.
Here.
Member McQuarrie. Member ex officio Member Rosenberg. A quorum's present.
Thank you. Is there any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Any disclosures for tonight's meeting, or this afternoon's meeting, I guess? Seeing none, we'll move on past that. And then public comment. Let me make a comment about public comment, I guess, so that I refresh people's memory. Members of the public who wish to provide live public comment may do so during the designated public comment periods indicated on the agenda, which would be before or after we do business, but via telephone appearance by dialing the numbers listed below. Well, which I don't have. There it is, 1-408-418-9388, 1-408-418-9388. So what I'm saying is public comment are received before and after the business of this meeting. I hope that's clear enough. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes, and we have that in the package for July 8th. Oh, well, duh. After I just explained it, huh? Let's move on. Well, no, it was very good. I got so tied up in the statement, I forgot. Is there any public comment?
There is no public comment,
All right,
Mr.
great.
Chair.
Thank you. That saved my there. All right, so then we'll move to the approval of the minutes for July 8th. Do I have a motion or changes?
I move to approve the minutes of the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization for July 8th, 2020 as presented.
I have a motion. Second, Lori. Any other discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next, now we move to the public meeting items for possible action. Discussion of possible action regarding contract 193-00159, Carson Area Transportation System Management Plan with Kimley Horn and Associates for a not-to-exceed amount of $573,960 through December 31st of 2021 to be funded from an agreement with the Nevada Department of Transportation. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Traffic Engineer. Just wanted to kind of go through a few talking points here related to the system management plan. So essentially, this is a planning level document to establish kind of operations and management objectives for the city and the CAMPO region. As many of you know, the CAMPO region, the signals and items associated with transportation system are kind of operated and maintained by Carson City through a variety of agreements. And these really consist of things like traffic signals, pedestrian crossings, flashing beacons, radar signs, school zone crossing signs, street lights, and illuminated street signs. And those are made up of different components like poles or foundations or conduits and boxes and things like that, as well as logistical elements, which include things like signal timing and flashing patterns and elements like that. So we're really looking to kind of document those types of things as part of this system management plan. There are a number of objectives we want to go through and accomplish through this system management plan, which really include kind of identifying the true costs of maintaining our system, identifying life cycle costs, highlighting those areas where we know we have issues or we know we need to make some improvements, looking for ways to get more funding either through reimbursement through existing agreements with NDOT or through other grants, looking at our own internal funding structure as well as our staffing needs and identifying kind of a program level assessment of the transportation system. And lastly, we want to try to identify program deficiencies and understand where we need to make enhancements. So the system management plan is really composed of three main tasks, aside from project management and then ultimately the report delivery. The task 3.1 is the asset management planning task. And this really focuses on the data collection effort and analysis of our existing infrastructure. So this really builds upon the city's existing asset management efforts and expands it to kind of the more CAMPO region, looking to tie our transportation systems together. We're expanding our GIS data collection into Lyon, Douglas, and Story counties. We're going to review a lot of our policies and procedures and see how those relate, as well as our existing agreements with our partner agencies. And we're going to examine the existing system and identify kind of where those improvements are needed and where we can, and how much those improvements may cost. So that's task 3.1. 3.2, once we kind of establish what we have, we're going to set some performance benchmarks and some measurement metrics to go through those and set those benchmarks. So that's kind of the next step. We want to set those benchmarks to track our progress and to outline those specific measurements so we can track to see if we reach our goals. Task 3.3 is kind of the implementation phase. It really consists of building on those benchmarks. So once we know what they are, we go in and we try something like a signal timing, or we time a corridor, signals a bunch in a corridor. We track our progress and how well we've met those benchmarks from previous tasks. So we're going to examine things like how traffic patterns may have changed based on our implementation, and then report all that information as part of the final report. Each task, I'll note, is authorized kind of one at a time, since each task kind of builds upon the previous. So as the tasks kind of go through, we'll make sure we modify things as needed to accommodate what the previous task's outcomes were. We're going to establish a technical advisory committee that'll be made up of individuals from each of our CAMPO member agencies, and they'll assist with kind of the decision-making and the creation of those performance measures and benchmarks. And they'll also provide input on potential changes to the existing agreements with those agencies, as well as our agreements with NDOT. Ultimately, this document all the information will be summarized into a final document, and it'll be presented to all the member agency boards as well as this board. The agreement is fully funded through an NDOT grant, planning agreement, and we're targeting a December 21st project completion. And I know Kimley Horn is anxious and ready to go. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. That's it.
Chris, first, in the agenda title and in the staff report, it has a contract amount of $573,960, but the contract is $776,960. Can you tell me which one's correct?
Wow.
We're authorizing an amount of $573,960.
Okay, so then the contract is not correct. On page 6 of the contract compensation, it says $576,960, if we can correct that.
Okay, you're right.
And then I had a question in Exhibit A, in task 3.1.3B, signalized crosswalks. And so they're going to collect the information on the sidewalks, and one of the bullet points says curb ramps, whether they're ADA compliant or not ADA compliant, and then a note, the specific out of compliance item will not be noted. Would there be a way for them to just put maybe a footnote? So if there are predetermined non-compliant items that they're looking for, so when they're marking these, they can go, okay, this curb ramp is a number 1 or number 2 or number 3, so that you could very quickly go back and see what the non-compliance is if they're not going to note it. It just seems like, why are we doing the task if we're not going to know why it's out of compliance? It seems like we have to go back and then do the work again at a future point in time.
Right, and that's a good question. There are a number of factors associated with ADA compliance, and multiple ramps may have, or a single ramp may have multiple items that are not in compliant. And so there's kind of an order of precedent, and what we've talked about doing is certainly noting if we come across one of those items, we're definitely going to note that down. But we weren't initially planning on going through and noting every item of noncompliance. So if we get to the point where like, hey, there's no truncated domes on this particular ramp, this ramp is out of compliance because there's no truncated domes. But we may not get to the point where the pedestrian push button is too far out of reach or too high by an inch, because that is just one of the multiple items of ADA compliance to track. So once a ramp is out of compliance, we'll identify why we've identified it's out of compliance, and then we'll know we'll need to do something at that point.
Okay, then my final question was on the wrong way driving devices. We don't have any in our jurisdiction right now, correct?
They haven't been fully installed or operational to my knowledge. I know Kimley Horn is working with NDOT on that program separately with NDOT, but to my knowledge, they're not operational right now. The poles have been installed, and I believe the infrastructure, such as like conduits and things, have been installed, but the flashing lights and those types of elements have not been installed yet.
And do we have an ETA on when that might be done? Is it a funding issue or is it a equipment issue?
I do not know that answer.
Okay,
I have to check with Kimley Horn or NDOT on that.
if you could check and get back to us.
Will do.
Thank you.
I might be able to add to that a little bit. I don't, for the record, Sandra Rosenberg, NDOT. I don't have the details of the specific work that's been done in the CAMPO region on the wrong-way driver system, but I do know in the ones that we have been testing out, we've had some challenges with when it gets activated and the reporting and false identification. So I think we're still doing some more QA/QC on the system itself, as well as getting various approvals from Federal Highway Administration, because it's still considered a pilot type application. So we can get you more details in the future, but that's my understanding, is that there's a number of kind of technical issues as well as approval issues on that.
Thank you, Sandra.
Done? Okay. Anybody down here? Lori? Great.
I have one question. So refresh my memory if you can. I thought we had a report not too long ago about, I'm not wrong, good. But didn't we just do ADA ramps and had an identification system put in place that told us the progress we were making on bringing them all into compliance? And so do you see a need then, you're going to get different information or more information that ramps are not in compliance that we didn't know about from that other report? I'm just trying to understand this between the two reports.
That's a great question. Thanks for asking. So you recently saw the Carson City ADA transition plan for facilities in the public right-of-way. And there are a number of barriers to ADA compliance that we're striving to get to with regard to our asset management. This particular ADA transition plan, we are in our infancy because of the lack of funding. The only barrier that I identified was the presence or absence of ramps. We've started with some of that more detailed barrier information related to the truncated domes and the visibility differences, some of those things, but they're not everywhere. So we have an inventory and we have the start of a barrier list. This then takes it to the next level with regard to signalized intersections. So there's no redundancy. It's just the next kind of iterative step.
I guess no redundancy, but actions from this will be able to be rolled into the other document to make it more robust in the future.
Absolutely.
That's a better, okay, so that's where the data will be used, is what I'm trying to get to, is what I'm gonna do with the results, kind of like he says, okay, it's non-compliant, but now what? So then it'll flow into the other report to give us, again, the picture of what we need to do to accomplish removal of barriers. Okay,
That's correct.
all right, thank you.
If I could follow up on that, I think what Lori's asking is Kimley Horn going to provide us the data in a format that we can import into our GIS system?
Yes.
Yes, we're going to provide Kimley Horn our exact GIS information for them to populate exactly, and then they'll provide it back to us. So it'll be just a seamless transition.
Anything else? Who did you envision on the TAC?
The TAC is primarily meant to be made up of members from the CAMPO agencies, so somebody from Lyon County, Story County, Douglas County, Carson City, probably NDOT as well, so folks like that.
Are they aware of that yet?
I think there was some previous meetings with TAC back in September and October, so we would follow up with those same participants.
That's correct. The kind of preliminary TAC roster, we met and they reviewed the scope before the RFP went out. If you're asking whether it would be appropriate for a member of CAMPO to sit on the TAC, we could certainly accommodate that as well.
Well, I was just curious that I was assuming that was a part of the deal to be part of the TAC, but the board that was responsible. But the fact that they got to review the RFP is big, so that's cool. That's great. Yeah, they had a chance to see the package for it even went out. So, and then my next question is, we had a PhD here showing a signal optimization with a graph that was pretty specific to a lot of detail. Is that any part of this, or does Kimley Horn bring a whole new system into place and maybe made recommendations for software or upgrading or all that stuff? Is that part of this?
We have asked as part of this, and Kimley Horn has, I believe they've contracted with the University of Nevada to do that same type of program, yes.
Okay, well, that answered that. The sub, yeah, I didn't catch that. So that was very specific and detailed to probably a big learning curve to put that all together, I guess. So thank you for that. And then you got alternatives, well, not alternatives, optionals. So the optionals, is that if the budget looks good for after you've done a few months, or is this like part of the deal?
Yeah, the optionals that's certainly one option. Some of the optionals as well include things, I'll give it for instance, like NV Energy lights.
I saw that. That's
NV Energy
insane.
gives us a database, a listing of all their streetlights that they own, that we pay the electric bill for, essentially. They've given us that information, and we're going to see if we can incorporate that to put that into our GIS system, because we don't have that in today. So if that level of effort's easy, we'll do it. If it's harder, then maybe we can discuss doing an optional task. So that's an example of how the optional task may be used.
You'd think Nevada Energy would be able to give you that data somehow, but obviously not.
I guess there's differences in GIS programs. I have limitations in my knowledge of that.
Just a difference in the software, huh? I'll be dang. All right, that's the end of my questions. If anybody had any other questions. I don't see Molly on the air, but her name on there at least, if she wanted to say something or anything. Do you know if Molly wanted to say anything, or are we just moving on? No, she's not on the air.
This is Molly, and I am here.
Oh, your name's not up on my screen, so Molly, did you want to add anything at all?
No, I think Chris did a really great job describing the project, and I know that we're getting really excited to start working on this and partnering with CAMPO on this project.
Great. All right. Well, no public comments, so I bring it back to the commission for a motion or any other comments.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve contract 193-00159 with a correction to paragraph 5 compensation, correcting the amount to not to exceed a maximum of $573,960.
Got a second with Lori? Any other discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimous. Thank you. I think that'll be a nice project for you guys. Get that done. 6B, for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding and authorization for the CAMPO chair to sign the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization and the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission joint Title VI plan and CAMPO's required assurances. Dirk.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the Title VI plan is to demonstrate CAMPO's commitment and compliance with federal requirements of Title VI. Title VI requires that no person in the United States shall, on the grounds of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or otherwise subjected to discrimination under any program or activity for which CAMPO receives federal financial assistance from the Department of Transportation. I'm going to go through briefly just the contents of the plan. So the plan includes a policy statement, establishes a Title VI coordinator, which is a transportation manager. It includes assurances to Title VI requirements, which must be signed by the chair and incorporated into certain legal contracts and documents. The plan commits staff to annual training, which be completed through required readings. The plan documents existing operation standards for selecting projects, designing projects, constructing projects, and so forth. This information can be used to determine if discrimination, intentional or unintentional, is taking place. The plan identifies the location of census tracts, by census tracts of high concentrations of minorities and areas below the average household median income. The plan compares the location of these census tracts with the location of recent capital projects to ensure that minority households are not disproportionately impacted, denied fair participation in, or denied benefits of federally funded projects. Based on the analysis, capital projects are being fairly distributed throughout the Carson area and the CAMPO area and are not disproportionately impacting minorities. The plan performed a census tract level analysis to identify households with limited English-speaking abilities. Overall, approximately 4% of the households in the Carson area are considered limited English-speaking. These households are predominantly Spanish-speaking. The plan includes the complaint procedures and forms, which are provided in English and Spanish. To date, no complaints have been filed. So the next step is if the board authorizes the chair to sign the Title VI plan, the plan will then be submitted to NDOT to document compliance with Title VI. So that concludes my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, it was good narrative to explain this document, much better than trying to read that, so thank you for that. It's nice to have zero complaints, huh? So again, there's no public comments, so I bring it back for a motion or any other necessary comments. Sure, thank you.
Okay. I move to authorize the chair to sign the Title VI plan and CAMPO's required assurances as presented.
I have a motion. Second, Brad. Any more discussion? No. Call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, carries unanimous. Item 6C. For discussion only, presentation and discussion on the ongoing public outreach and development of CAMPO's 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Dirk again.
Thank you, Chair. So staff wanted to provide a quick update on the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, also known as 2050 RTP. Regarding the public outreach, staff conducted an online survey back in late spring. Staff has coordinated with staff from Carson City, Douglas County, and Lyon County. Staff held a public open house meeting. Staff held 2 virtual meetings for the Regional Transportation Plan Working Group. Once the plan is drafted, the plan will be distributed to the Regional Transportation Plan Working Group for review, as well as the regional partners. Staff has reviewed the level of service outputs from the CAMPO's travel demand model, looking at no-build scenarios for 2020, 2030, and 2050. Preliminary text for the active transportation section and the transit section has been drafted. Crash data has been organized and is under review. Financial assumptions presented earlier in the summer have been developed. Project list has been developed. Cost estimates are being developed as well to make sure that they fit within the available revenue. And staff is hoping to bring a draft to the September meeting and have the final plan presented for approval in October. So that concludes my comments. One thing that staff wants to note is that if there are any, words of wisdom or any comments that you want to impart onto staff, we're happy to hear. Right now, we're in the process of really tying everything together, creating that central theme and really identifying those investment strategies. So with that concludes my comments.
Any questions? Again, good.
Just a comment
Oh,
from
Sandra.
So I just want to, give kudos to staff for their extensive work on this. It's always a big lift for all of the NPOs in the state when we update our long-range plans. And there's never a good time. There's always activities that are going on at the same time while you're updating this. But I was just thinking that the agreement that we approved earlier in this meeting will help inform, I think, future RTP updates and future TIP updates, because once we have a better understanding of the assets as well as operational opportunities, we can have a discussion about the best use of the limited funds. And I know we're doing that. We're doing that statewide. We're encouraging all the entities to do, asset management plans, operational plans. So it'll be great to get that information and see how that feeds future discussions about, again, how you spend limited resources. So kudos on both of those efforts, and we look forward to continuing to be a partner on them.
Thank you. Any other comments? This is a non-action item, so we move on to board comments. I work to the right. Brad, any comments? Laurie? Greg? No comments? Any comments from Bob?
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This is Sandra again. We had our board meeting on Monday, and we had our 2021 annual work program approved, and acceptance of the 2021 through 2024 statewide transportation improvement program, which will now be submitted to Federal Highway Administration, and then we'll continue to work with CAMPO on incorporating any TIP changes that they may have. We're very excited about that. This is a more robust process than we've been through in the past in terms of really having a performance-driven process that we, Kevin kind of talked about last month. So we're excited about that, as well as some of the budget and revenue projections are starting to look a little bit better than they were a month or two ago. So we're hopeful to be able to deliver the plan we put together. So that's all I have at this time.
Thank you. I guess that's it for comments then. So next meeting is 4:30 Wednesday, September 9th here in the Sierra Room. And the last chance for public comment. Is there anybody on the line for public comment?
There is no public comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is a call for adjournment. Please, may I have a motion, please? So moved by Lori. And RTC is going to start at 5 o'clock. 3 more minutes. Thank you, everybody.
Called to order this meeting of the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission. It is 5:07 PM on Wednesday, August 12th. We are in the Sierra Room at 851 East William Street. Before we start, I'd like to read a disclosure into the record. The public may provide public comment in advance of a meeting by written submission to the following email address, lmaloney@carson.org. For inclusion or reference in the minutes of the meeting, your public comment must include your full name and be submitted by email by not later than 3 p.m. the day before the meeting. Members of the public who wish to provide live public comment may do so during the designated public comment periods indicated on the agenda via telephonic appearance by dialing 408-418-9388. Do not join by phone if you wish to make public comment. All right. So having read that, Tamara, can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Bonkowski.
Here.
Vice Chair Kimbrough.
Here.
Commissioner Bagwell. Commissioner McQuarrie. Commissioner Stedfield. A quorum's present.
Thank you. Any changes to the agenda tonight?
No, Mr. Chair.
Any agenda changes from the commissioners? Seeing none, we'll move to agenda item 3, disclosures. Any disclosures from the commissioners tonight? I see everybody shaking their head no. This is our opportunity for our first public comment period. Agenda item 4. Desi, do we have anybody on the line for public comment?
There is no public comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We're now on agenda item number 5, approval of the minutes. I'd like to kick this over to our Assistant DA for some clarifications, and then we'll bring it back and make some motions.
This is Todd Reese, Deputy DA. On the agenda today are 2 items for approval of minutes. The first is for corrective action for approval of the June 10 minutes, and the second is for approval of the July minutes. The corrective action item is directed at last month's agenda. The July agenda for RTC erroneously stated action item to approve the May 13th, 2020 minutes, when it should have said approval of the June 10, 2020 minutes. The May 13th, 2020 minutes were actually approved at the June meeting, and so but the approval of the June minutes at the July meeting was technically improper under the open meeting law because the action item did not state approval of the June minutes. Accordingly, the corrective action item here is on the agenda of this month to properly approve the June 10th, 2020 minutes. Vice Chair Kimbrough, you had some comments on the June 10th minutes in the nature of clarifications of your comments on them. And during the discussion of the June 10th minutes at this meeting, I would simply ask you to repeat your comments.
Yeah, for item 5A, there was, in the minutes, it was mentioned that only a half a mile of trail existed from this trailhead that was under discussion, and there are several trails that come out of that trailhead, was my only change.
Thank you.
The minutes that you were fixing is the comment in 6A, when you expressed there's a half mile. He's changing it to.
Yes.
But the minutes item that he's discussing is the 6A comment. So that she links your comments to that item.
I see
in
what you're
minutes.
saying, yeah, but for now, it's 5A and the package we were given today.
Okay,
So is it a change that you're making or just a comment?
it's clarification. Yeah, it's just a clarification of his previous comments.
Yes.
Okay, so we're good to start taking motions on the minutes.
You're good to start taking motions in the minutes.
All right, so I'll bring this back to the commission, and I will accept a motion for possible corrective action on 5A, discussion and possible approval of the June 10, 2020 draft minutes.
I move approval of the minutes of June 10, 2020 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are we okay on the DA side?
Yes.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The vote is 4-0. Can we take a motion for 5B for possible action and approval of the July 8th, 2020 minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of July 8, 2020 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The vote is also 4-0. Thank you all. We are now moving on to agenda item 6, public meeting items. Item 6A for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding an authorization for the RTC chair to sign the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization and Carson City Regional Transportation Commission Joint Title VI Plan and RTC's required assurances. Dirk, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So the presented Title VI plan is a joint plan for CAMPO and the Carson City RTC. Given the similarities between this item and the previous CAMPO item, I was going to keep this presentation brief. But for the record, the purpose of Title VI plan is to demonstrate RTC's commitment and compliance with federal requirements for Title VI. Title VI requires that no person in the United States shall, on the grounds of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or otherwise be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity for which the RTC receives federal financial assistance from the Department of Transportation. That concludes my comments. I'm happy to discuss the Title VI plan.
Go ahead, Lucia.
Mr. Chair, one additional comment for the record. RTC already has a Title VI plan for transit and FTA dollars. Just for the record, noting that this plan neither supersedes nor conflicts with that existing plan. This plan is for federal highway dollars that come through NDOT to CAMPO and RTC on the highway side. So just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, then I would accept a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move to authorize the chair to sign the Title VI plan and the RTC's required assurances as presented.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. We are now on agenda item 7, internal communications and administrative matters, non-action items. We will start with item 7A, transportation manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to provide a couple updates on some capital projects that aren't typically included in the project status report that Mr. Martinovich will give in a few minutes. On Sherman Lane, there's a water line replacement. It's also on Viking Way around the corner. The construction cost is about $750,000. And while there is no RTC money included, there will be lane closures and detours and a fair amount of work in the roadway. Construction is anticipated to start the week of August 24th and will continue for about 4 months. So I wanted to make you aware of that. Likewise, there's a Riverview Sewer Lift Station project, which is about $370,000 in value, replacing a sewer lift station near the east end of 5th Street. Again, no RTC money included, but there will be lane closures and detours on 5th Street affecting that neighborhood. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. The project is anticipated to begin in early September. And once construction begins, it's about a 4-month construction timeline. I will head off Chris's comments on Kings Canyon and just give you a brief update on that as well. FHWA is updating the plan sheets for Kings Canyon to incorporate RTC, the Parks and Rec and Open Space Commissions, and the public's comments. There were some instances where there were some conflicting comments, and staff did their best to incorporate as many comments as broadly as possible while also staying within the project budget. We are getting a revised parking lot design and a slightly narrower roadway. We're responding to the comments on no parking, and again, trying to be as responsive as possible. Revised 95% plans are expected in October and November, and we are looking to go to bid for construction next season.
Lucia, can you just clarify on the narrow roadway? Because the comments at the meeting were to retain the full width, but subsequent to that, we got some initial cost estimates back, and we were way over budget. Is that correct?
That is correct. Preliminary indication was that we were over budget. We also got a lot of comments, concerns from the residents about speeding, and combined those comments among with some other considerations were kind of a compromise to narrow the road slightly while still retaining operability of the road.
I think part of the other thing is Brad was not a party to the meeting where the conflicting thought process dealt with the ability for the horses to go up the one side, and that was part of the reason also for wanting to narrow the pavement so that the horses could go up. So you had conflicting answers from the Park and Rec and Open Space committees than what we did here at RTC. I think that's what she was. So it was a conflicting comment, but we came at it from very different purposes or uses, right? We had very conflicting inputs even to the discussion, so just want to clarify.
And one last comment, Flint Road, which is the road off of US 50 East out to the landfill, that we opened bids last Friday for the Flint Road reconstruction. This is a full depth reconstruction from Highway 50 East to Eastgate Siding Road. There were 3 bids received, and the low bid was from Spanish Springs Construction for a total not to exceed of $433,888. The project budget was $499,205, so we were within budget. And this project will be night work on Flint Drive in order to keep the landfill, the rifle range, and the VNT open during the day. The contract approval will be going to the Board of Supervisors because it's funded with landfill dollars, this project, but did want to make you aware, and it's a good thing for our roadway condition. It needed it. So that concludes my manager's report. Thank you.
Any questions on the transportation manager's report? All right, we'll move on to 7B, street operation activity report.
I'll take that one, Chair. Dirk Warren for the record. So the streets operation report is for June. Just as a reminder, the streets crew continues to crank projects out for the sidewalk, so that's a high number. There's been quite a bit of shoulder work, mainly along Ash Canyon near Winnie and Ormsby. And one thing to note, one of the things that we don't talk about too much in roadway preservation is having a healthy shoulder. The healthy shoulder provides, drainage, preservation of the roadway, and also some safety improvements. So it's a really good thing that we're addressing as much shouldering as we can. But last month, I noted that our street sweepers were down. So I'm happy to report that all 3 are back up in operation. And then lastly, there's been quite a bit of street patching that we wanted to note that's been going around throughout the city. So that concludes the operations report. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, then we will move on to item 7C, transportation project status report. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll run through these projects. The first project is the South Carson Street Complete Streets project. Essentially, we are on schedule, and most of the underground work has been completed on the project, which is good news. Work is continuing on the roundabout at Stewart Street, and they're planning on building this kind of in 2 phases. They're under the phase 1 at this point, where Stewart Street's closed, and they're building that half of the roundabout. It's expected to be open sometime in mid-September, at which time Stewart Street will reopen as well. There's also additional paving going on throughout the project limits on the main line as well as on the multi-use path. There's paving occurring this week down at Clearview and in the area of Eagle Station. There's also paving and concrete work occurring up in the area north of Stewart up to 5th. So that work is ongoing. The planned schedule for paving includes some work, again, at Stewart and Sonoma completion by the end of the week, as well as work at 5th, mid-September and early October for those northern sections. So essentially, like I said, the project is generally on schedule, and we're looking to complete most of the work here by the end of the year. Moving on to the next project, this is the Colorado multi-use path. Work is continuing on this project. All of the earthwork has been completed. They're doing ADA ramps and improvements at the intersection of Fairview. Paving of the path is slated to begin the week of August 17th, that's next week, and they are working day about 55 of 75. So there's about a month of work left on the project. Next project is the multi-use path to the Edmonds Sports Complex. The design, 30% design was completed by our staff, and it was submitted to NDOT for their review, so we're expecting comments back any day now on our 30% design. The plan is to get this project constructed next summer. Kings Canyon, Lucia talked about the Kings Canyon Trailhead Improvement Project. If there's anything additional we want to chat about there, I think Lucia covered most of that. I'll just note real quick that we're continuing to coordinate with property owners as well as NV Energy regarding reconstruction of driveways and entry into the properties. Next project is Roop Street Rehabilitation Project. All the survey has been completed. We've got right-of-way information. We are evaluating some different lane configurations and things like different options for adding bike lanes, as well as the general roadway typical section, including the pavement reconstruction method, whether that's a full depth reconstruction or some other method. So we're just kind of initially in the initial stages of design on this project. Fairview Drive Rehabilitation Project. This one is right now somewhat on hold while the roundabout is being constructed. Since they're being completed both by SNC, we didn't want to have both the roundabout area closed as well as Fairview closed. So Fairview is being used as some of that detour, and so once that first half of the roundabout is completed, work will resume on Fairview. I will note that the water line work on Fairview is all completed, so the next phase is the roadway reconstruction portion. Next project is the Airport Road Utility Replacement Project. This project is going relatively well. It's been a bit of a struggle due to the depth of the sewer line. They completed a marathon weekend to get the new sewer line across US 50. That was 2 weekends ago, and they'll have another marathon weekend coming up to get the water line across US 50. So that's a nighttime work, kind of a 24-hour traffic control to get that water line and the sewer line across the road there. This project is about working day 75 of 100. So again, we had about a month and a half to go on that project. The Airport Road CDBG ADA project. This project was bid and awarded, I believe, last month here at the board, and they're planned to have early construction in early September following the completion of that second marathon weekend on the other Airport Road sewer project. We didn't want to have conflicting traffic control at that same intersection. The District 2 Roop Street Pavement Preservation Project. This is one of our slurry projects. This was completed back in July. So essentially the work is finished. We are waiting for the processing of the payment, but there's no additional work left on this project. Solomon Road and Russell Way Pavement Preservation Project, another one of our slurry projects. The slurry portion of this project has been completed as well, but we are waiting for the arrival of the poles for the RRFB down there at the linear ditch crossing. Those are a very long lead item, and there's, to my knowledge, no set date on when those will arrive from the manufacturer. So that's the last item pending on that one. The Northridge Drive Reconstruction Project, we received our 90% comments back from NDOT on Monday, so we'll be finalizing those and packaging the final plans and specifications up for bidding. We will bid that probably this fall and award sometime in the winter for construction next summer. The District 2 Long Street Project, the design on this one's about at a 30% level. We're doing some additional storm drain work down on Rand and Camille to pick up some drainage and some known drainage issues off the slopes there, Sunland, kind of the Sunland Park area. So we're doing a little bit of additional survey in that area. This project's moving forward. 2 more projects, the Telegraph Reconstruction Project. Construction was awarded to Aspen at the Board of Supervisors, I think about a month ago, and construction is starting probably maybe this week or definitely next week. So we'll start to see that work occurring there, and Telegraph will be closed through that duration of construction. The last project is the Robinson Area Sewer Replacement Project. We're out doing survey on this project, and so there's very little design at this point, but that'll start ramping up once we get the survey back for this. So with that, that's the project status report. If you have any questions, happy to answer. Thanks.
Any questions on the project status report? All right. Sure.
Just a thought or a question for the future, because I get asked the question all the time. Is there any way you can give me the mileage or distance or something that's being done on these projects? You know, is this a quarter mile, half, because they go, how much is a slurry project? How much is, I don't know. I'm just saying it might be helpful if you could add any distance on these reports, because I want to tell you what a great job these are. I really like the revamp, and I use them in public meetings and comments and things all the time. So great job. But if you, the little pictures have been great, super ads, but I will admit I have no scale or anything to be able to say, oh, that's a mile and it cost us
Okay, sure, certainly.
500,000, so that people can understand the scope and how much it really costs to do the work. So
Definitely, we can
if
add
you
that
could do
on
that,
there.
it would be
Yep.
wonderful. And thank you again. Great job.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Right, then we'll move on to agenda item 8, board comments. We'll start with you, Greg. No, Lori? No. All right, I do have one question. The multi-use path on Highway 50 East in front of the recently completed O'Reilly's Auto Parts Store, that is asphalt. Do we have a policy on construction materials for that multi-use path? Because I was thinking that it was supposed to be concrete.
So that section of path, there's an agreement between Carson City and NDOT, and NDOT is required to maintain it. And since that agreement existed, when that project came in, we kicked it to NDOT because we didn't want to default on their agreement. So we wanted to make sure that NDOT was happy with whatever was being put down, so that in the future they would continue to maintain it. So that was how that one played out. And I know to the east is, I want to say, Dollar General, which has a concrete sidewalk, and that was before my time. But since we knew that the maintenance agreement existed, that's why we kicked the ball or the decision to NDOT so that we didn't void the contract.
Right, that's my concern, is that section now goes asphalt, concrete, so it's not a consistent surface. So is that a conversation that we can have with NDOT going forward to get their agreement on some kind of development standards for the multi-use path? It just doesn't seem to make sense. It's going to make it harder to maintain, not easier to maintain, if you're going from concrete to asphalt to concrete.
That's correct, and that's what we were trying to do with this one, and that's why we brought in NDOT. I don't know if NDOT was brought in with a Dollar General one. And since we knew that maintenance agreement existed, we wanted to start making sure that we were in compliance with whatever standard NDOT wanted to have. But we can definitely have conversations on that and make sure that it's known throughout the area that path and that agreement.
If you go to the north side where Unique Sounds is, same thing there. They required them to put in concrete. So I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing is consistent and we're actually trying to make it easier to do our maintenance and not harder.
No, that's a great comment. We can do that. And one thing to add is that the agreements don't, it's kind of a piecemeal system. Some of the agreements date back to the 70s and to the 80s, and they all have different limitations. But that's, I think your point is make sure that we have consistency, I think, from a maintenance and from an appearance standpoint.
So we're currently working on the South Carson Street right-of-ways and coming up with some policies for that corridor. Maybe we can tie in the Highway 50 East William Street, whatever policies we're going to come up with. Let's just coordinate and make sure that what we're doing is consistent between South Carson and East William Street.
Copy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next meeting, it's, yes.
If I may, when they did the improvements in front of Classy Seconds, that's also asphalt. That's fairly recent, for whatever that's worth.
Right. It's just if you ride a bike, it makes it difficult when you're, going from one surface to another. And I can just see going through there with a blade on a plow for snow removal and going from concrete to asphalt. You're either going to tear up the asphalt or you're going to chip the concrete one way or the other. I just don't see that it's a good policy. So if we can get it changed, fine. I know that it's up to NDOT, not up to us, but if we can get it changed, we should initiate that conversation. Our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, September 9th, 2020, immediately after the end of the CAMPO meeting. And this is the public's opportunity for a final public comment. Desi, anybody on the line for public comment?
There is no final public comment, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I have one last thing that I need. My notes indicate that I need to add regarding the minutes.
All right, is this a public comment item? Otherwise, I'm going to cut you off.
This is
No,
not
go
a
ahead, go
public
ahead.
comment item, but I do need to mention it for posterity. The NRS does require that a public body approve minutes within 45 days of the prior meeting. In this case, the June 10 minutes, we're beyond that deadline, but because we're correcting a prior action, there is no violation of that statute.
That was my assumption. We approved them incorrectly previously within the allowed timeframe, and this was a corrective action to clarify our first error.
Correct.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? If not, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for participating.